A new and really unnerving report is shedding new light on the rampant sexual abuse within the Archdiocese of Baltimore.
The more than 450-page redacted report spans 8 decades, and it also accuses more than 150 members of clergy of sexual abuse and physical torture of more than 600 victims.
And most of them kids, young people. CBS News national correspondent Nikki Battiste joins us now. You've looked into so many stories of abuse by various jurisdictions of the Catholic Church. I'm just curious, from your point of view and in this fresh report, what stands out to you the most and should be of note to our viewers?
I think what stands out is what is so much of the same of what we've heard in Pennsylvania, in Boston, is there's this pervasive sexual abuse allegedly going on. More than 600 victims here, more than 1,000 in Pennsylvania, which I covered a few years ago. But also the cover-up. Again, you have this institution, this archdiocese, covering up almost 80 years of allegations from children, teenagers, who didn't initially often report their abuse, but eventually alleged abuse, but eventually did. And I think you have such high numbers of victims alleging they've been sexually abused and the cover-up. And at some point you think, how has this happened?
So this report is from the Maryland Attorney General. Are we hearing anything from the Archdiocese of Baltimore? Because remember, the Catholic Church, after Boston especially, said that they intended to do all these investigations, root out, I think they called it an evil within the church. But now we're hearing that this was even taking place, you found, at the same time that Boston was being exposed.
Yeah, some of the later allegations in this report were happening at the same time that Boston was being unveiled to the country after the Boston Globe broke that story. The Archbishop in Baltimore released an apology, of course, to survivors and victims and promised to have future accountability, which is what we've heard a lot of in the past. He also said, and I think this is what's most important for survivors and victims whom I've talked to over the years, is that we believe you. And I think that's really what this report does for them, is that they feel like finally they're being heard, they're being believed, because the reality is in most of these cases, the criminal statute of limitations is far past and no legal action can be taken if there is, credible evidence that any of these victims or survivors have been sexually abused.
And Maryland's governor is now saying we're removing that statute of limitations for future, right, incidents?
The civil statute, yes. They've just erased essentially the civil statute of limitations. So any of these alleged victims can now technically file a civil lawsuit for potentially financial damages, emotional damages, things like that.
Against the perpetrators and the church as well,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
And we know that Baltimore County Police Department is at least encouraging anyone out there who has their own claims to reach out to them. But this is also about money, Nikki. I know that the church says it's already paid more than $13 million, this church in Baltimore, for compensation and care for abuse victims since the 80s, including almost $7 million towards 100 voluntary settlements. There is a huge financial liability that still exists.
Yes, and with the elimination of that civil statute of limitations, they're likely going to face millions of dollars more in lawsuits. And we've seen the same scenario play out in other dioceses, and they've had to file for bankruptcy.
Well, Nikki, appreciate that you've been speaking with the victims, the survivors. Tell us just very quickly what they have to say to you.
I spoke with one survivor named in this report, and she said, look, I've been waiting 50 years to see the name of my alleged abuser here. It says he allegedly abused 36 other people, the very same Catholic school, and that's all I needed was to be believed.
Wow. And I know you'll have more on tonight's CBS Evening News. Nikki Battiste, great to have you with us on this.
Thank you.
Thank you.